Hi, everyone. I am Nan Simonson, and I'm so glad you're here. I am a health and lifestyle coach with lifestyle medicine going on 3 years now, and I am offering a monthly cooking class that I call Recipes for Longevity, because I believe that with the help of lifestyle attention to the things that matter, as the College of Lifestyle Medicine dictates. And there are 4 pillars, and one that isn't named often, but I think it's primary, and I'll go back to number 1 later, at least what I consider number 1. But those pillars of health are resilience, which means enough sleep, enough rest, enough decompressing, community, the people around us that we love, that love us back, our commitment, our involvement with other people, absolutely crucial. People live longer, even with terminal illnesses, when they are connected to other people. We also believe in movement, and we'll call it exercise, we'll call it movement. That just means the importance of moving our body on a regular basis. A good guideline is 30 minutes a day in something that gets us breathing a little harder, and that's easy to do with just walking. And then finally, nourishment. And nourishment is outlined by the College of Lifestyle Medicine as plant-based as we can get. I am going on almost 3 years, 100% plant-based. People could call that vegan, no plant or no animal product at all, no dairy, eggs, fish, chicken, meat of any kind. But that goes along with a whole philosophical thing. And so whole food, meaning not just no animal, but not a lot of processed things that our body doesn't know what to do with, and plant-based. That means vegetables, grains, fruit, legumes, seeds and nuts, and tubers. And today's menu falls right in line with that. And there's an emphasis on something today. Gosh, I was going to say, I wonder if I should ask you to guess it later on, but I'm not going to do that. I didn't realize until I had put it all together that this is, I'm going to say, heavy on equipment. And I'm sorry, I'm using equipment for everything. And yet you don't have to. You could do some chopping, you could do some hand blending. But these are some of the things that, quite frankly, I would not be too happy to do without in my kitchen. One of them is the Instant Pot. I had mine for 6 months, afraid to do anything with it at all. It's the best $100, $90, $70, depending on if you get it with 20% off at Bed Bath & Beyond, or if you get it at Costco. Best money spent. And you'll see one of the reasons why today this is such an easy way to prepare food. The Vitamix Blender, it's what they call high-powered blender that will allow you to take hard things, hard as a rock. For example, my smoothie that I make in the morning, carrots, beets, celery, frozen berries, frozen banana, frozen what Costco calls power greens, and actually Trader Joe's has them as well. But I freeze them. I buy that big bag at Costco, many bags, and freeze them and throw those into the smoothie. The Vitamix will turn it into liquid. A lesser mixer will not. The carrots will be chunky, the beets will be kind of grainy, and you'll be drinking a, I don't know, like a gazpacho. And that's not the end of the world either. But the Vitamix is a great piece of equipment. I'll be showing you a food processor, but a teeny one. I love the Cuisinart. This is a Cuisinart, but a little one that I'm using for just a small amount. So forgive me for that. I hadn't thought about it before, and I don't want you to feel alienated by the equipment if you're in a tiny apartment and have very little of anything. This little thing is in my pantry. It's a deep pantry, so it's behind the food containers. I just have to move a couple things to get it out, and yet I do that happily every time. So I want to further introduce myself. I am an author. I wrote a book, Aging Powerfully, and my strongest desire when I began this book in July of 2020 and finished it in December of 2020. So it was only published 4 months ago. It is an Amazon bestseller. And my premise was back then, I'm 6 months away from turning 70. I feel better, stronger, healthier, using lifestyle as medicine, having conquered a lifetime eating disorder, which now is behind me almost 3 years. So there's a bit of memoir in there, but there's a lot of a evidence-based outline of how to apply the pillars of lifestyle medicine in our lives. And as Dr. Dysinger confirms, we are built to, made to be able to live well with vibrant health and balance and joy into our 80s, 90s, and beyond. When I hit 70, I decided this is not going to be the end. I'm going to have 2 or 3 decades more, knock on wood or whatever, because you never know. But that's the premise. So recipes for longevity. Let's get going. Today, we're going to cook the main dish in the Instant Pot, and I'm going to show you what it does. This is a handy cooking vessel that does pressure cooking. And I actually bought it before I bought the Instant Pot. I bought this very expensive, it was what, $160. It's supposed to be one of the best, a European model pressure cookers. That thing really scared me because those things, they don't have a lot of safety features other than that little bobblehead that goes on top, whereas the Instant Pot it's made with safety features. And a removable stainless steel pot. I love this because of the stainless steel. I don't want to cook in aluminum, I don't want to cook in iron, and I certainly don't want to cook in most of the stick-free surfaces, because a lot of those have chemicals that we don't want in us. Well, the value is that I'm not just pressure cooking, but I can do a lot of things. I can slow cook, I can saute, and I'm going to start this on Saute. If you were prompted to join today because you got the reminder from, this is just saying I hear you and Saute is on. If I put my fingers in there, am I feeling it get warm? Not yet. Why? Well, it's on, so it's going to. Oh, there, it's getting warm. Okay. You on? Saute. What was I saying? Oh, shoot. Okay, so one of the things that you're going to see me do in any of my recipes, I have a cooking channel on YouTube. If you go to my website, nansimonson.com, you can see the recipes I have posted on my website, photos of most of them, but you can also get to my cooking show, which is my YouTube channel. That's YouTube, Nan Simonson. And it will prompt you to my Instagram as well as Facebook. But you're going to see in every one of my recipes that we've got, Marissa, we're going to have to mute because we've got some sound coming through. Marissa?
Aaron and Ethan were out there, and then
Marissa, we've got, there we go. Okay, so I can even feel the heat now. What happens is most recipes will recommend that you saute, and I start just about everything with onion and garlic, or what we call a mirepoix in French cooking. Just a minute. I don't know if Marissa knows that we are not muted.
Oh, okay.
Marissa, we need to mute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to mute people, but they're unmuting themselves.
Oh dear. Okay. Okay. So when a recipe calls for sauteing onion, garlic, carrot, celery, that's called a Mirepoix. It's that combination. It's the French start for almost any kind of stew or a casserole and things like that. But in this case, we're just starting with onion. And the rest, oh, that's what I was saying. If you were prompted to join today, then which then led to your being able to get into this, it's called Big Marker, as opposed to Zoom, this show, then you also, if you looked, and some people miss this, because there's the push to join, but at the very bottom, if you scroll, you'll see that there are photos of what I'm making and there are recipes. So go back to that if you didn't see it and you didn't get your recipes and didn't save them or print them. But what we're starting with is an Instant Pot buckwheat. If you're not familiar with buckwheat, it's a grain and it's a gluten-free grain. I don't do anything with gluten because I am sensitive to it, not celiac, but sensitive to it. And it is not something that my body handles well. And there are a lot of people who are sensitive to gluten, especially people with autoimmune conditions. And so I will eat buckwheat, amaranth, quinoa. Gosh, there are a lot of grains that we can have that are gluten-free. You can, if you're not sure what they are, you can, let me get myself together here. You can Google it. But I love buckwheat. It's very different than most grains. You can buy it from Bob's Red Mill. You can order it online. And you can either buy it like this, and this is toasted buckwheat, and people will call them groats. I love oat groats, which are oat berries, like a wheat berry, but an oat berry before it's been steel cut or rolled. Well, buckwheat groats is what this is. It's almost the seed before it's been processed in any way. And then this is buckwheat groats that haven't been toasted. And you can buy them both ways, and you can use either one in this recipe. I just like the flavor of the toasted groats. It gives it a kind of a nuttier flavor. And I bought this to show you, but what I'm going to do with it is just put it in a pan or put it in a shallow pan in a 350-degree oven, maybe 325, and just stir it until it gets toasted, because I like that flavor. But that's what this is: buckwheat, gluten-free, non-GMO, organic. And all of my grains I prefer to buy organic, because when a grain is ready to be picked, a lot of, well, the industry, especially if something is genetically modified and therefore able to be sprayed with insecticides as well, they use a desiccant, and the desiccant is either Roundup or something that dries out the seeds so that they don't have as much trouble with fungus when they pick it and put them in silos. Well, we don't want that stuff in us. So let me get started, and I'll keep talking while I'm getting this done. So the recipe, if you have it, calls for 2 cups of finely chopped onion, because this is a risotto, a Instant Pot vegan buckwheat and mushroom risotto. If you've made risotto with rice and you've made it in a classic way, what people love about risotto is that it's creamy, that it is almost like a very thick pudding, but not quite that wet, and that it's very rich in a lot of cases. A lot of risotto uses a lot of butter and a lot of cream. That's the other thing I don't put in my cooking. I don't use oils, and I don't use, for sure, I don't use butter. That's a meat product. We're not saying you shouldn't or couldn't or mustn't, but and I agree with this, the College of Lifestyle Medicine acknowledges that the healthiest diet for the planet and for people is one that's very heavily plant-based or exclusively plant-based. And I stick with that. So to get my onion finely cut. I could simply slice it. And this isn't a true cooking show where I'm showing you all methods, but I'll show you this, going through the onion and then finely slicing, finely dicing it like this will give me a uniform look. And the reason that I want this in a risotto is because you're not looking to have a chunky finished product. You're looking to have a more uniform finished product. And that's one way I can do it, to chop, there's a bigger piece, to chop it like that and put it in the pan. Well, the other way I can do it is with something I happen to like a lot. And this is the Vidalia Chopped Wizard. See what I mean? I'm rather heavy on equipment here today. But I like this. I like it a lot. And when I'm doing a lot of cooking, I love the idea that I can, and I'll show you what I mean. If I look at the side here, it shows me that I am already at 2 cups, and this calls for 2 cups of onion, or is it 2.5? No, it's 2, and a little extra isn't going to hurt. So I'm going to, in order to use this, the best way is to go from stem end to root end. I'm cutting it in thinner slices than I need to, because by cutting it in the thinner slice, there, I've just chopped that. You see how quickly that went, but also look at how uniform the onion is, because it's chopping it with this blade that has small uniform pieces. I make a soup, well, I make a lot of soups and stews that I use this in because I like the way the carrots look in uniform pieces, the zucchini, the, what else? Things like squash, or like butternut squash, or things like sweet potato. Well, sorry for the sound. I like that uniformity. On the other hand, I'll have stews. I love a stew when I'm using big chunks of potato and carrot. And in that case, I wouldn't do that. I would just cut it by hand. Now, I just put this onion in a completely dry pan to saute. And the reason that works, this is called dry saute. Those of you who have been with me in my classes know I do this all the time. And that is that the onion will weep and start to create a caramelization. And that's the reason that we saute it in the first place. Onion, carrot, celery, garlic. But garlic doesn't have a lot of moisture, so it's going to burn right away. And we don't want that. But the onion has a lot more moisture. And I'll show you too as I'm going. I'm going to leave that alone for just a minute. Let me show you the buckwheat. If you've never had, if you've never had buckwheat, that's what it looks like. And the other thing that I always do with grains is that I rinse them. Even though this is organic, it's picked, it goes into a big silo, it can sit for a long, long time, it goes through any light processing, let's say to take off some of the, if there is a hard, sort of a chaffy kind of a coating, I don't know if that's the case with buckwheat, I don't believe so. That's removed. Anyway, it's handled a lot, and then it sits for a while, and who knows how much dust it gets in the silo. Who knows how many things kind of walk around in there. So I always rinse it. Brown rice, beans, anything that I'm cooking, a bean, a grain, not seeds and nuts, but I rinse them. And I have a colander that's handy. It's just sitting here. Put it in, rinse it off. And what's kind of fun about buckwheat is there's such a distinctive aroma to it. It's earthy, nutty. It's quite unique. But when you rinse it, that really hits you. Now, what you do when you're dry sauteing is add, when it starts to brown a little bit, and actually it's not even, if you look at let me show you. If you look in the pan, you're not seeing a lot of brown there yet. I may not let it brown too much more because I want to get this thing started, but I'm going to let it brown a little bit more because, again, that's where I get my flavor. And what's going to happen is that I'm going to pour, when it starts to brown a little, stick a little, not burn, because burning is going to cause a bitterness always in garlic, and that's why you don't add garlic early, but a little bit in onion as well. Okay, now I'm getting a little bit of brownies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a splash of my vegetable broth, and I make this myself, and some of you have seen me do this 100 times, but for anyone that's new, I want to make sure that you know that you can save a lot of money rather than buying a quart of vegetable broth. It wouldn't come in a glass jar like this. This is how I store it because I make my own. And I just bought these jars online, and they have a cap, and I think it looks great to have them in an old-fashioned milk bottle. But I make my own, and all week long, well, we go to the farm store. There's a farm store near us here in Riverside, California called the Corona Family Farms. And they are not certified organic, but they grow things regeneratively, and their fruits and vegetables come out of the fields in the morning, and they don't resell it the next day. They have other ways of using it, and some of it's just composting. But this bag then came from all of the scraps, the top of carrots, some kale ribs. I don't have any carrot in here. Well, there's a lot of onion, there's onion tops, there's zucchini, ends, asparagus, bottoms, the core of bell peppers. I could just go on and on. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't put this is really browning now. I'm going to do one more splash of this to really get the caramelization going. And then I'll show you what the onions look like when I'm done with that. And now I'm going to add the garlic. So I peel my garlic, a lot of it at a time, chop it all at once, and 3 teaspoons, and this is a heady teaspoon, or tablespoon. 3 teaspoons is a tablespoon, but 1 tablespoon or 3 teaspoons of chopped garlic is 3 cloves of garlic. In other words, it's a teaspoon of clove. And that's an easy way to have that little jar filled and in the refrigerator, and I can do that once a week. Unless I'm doing a lot of cooking, then I'll need to do more of it. But that'll usually last me the week. And then I'm not chopping garlic. I buy the big fat cloves like this, because the fatter the clove, the easier it is for me to peel it and then to chop it. Okay, so I'll show you now what I've been aiming for. And that is, do you see the color now? See, it's brown, and that's caramelized, and there's a sweet kind of a fragrance to the onion. Do you have to do that? You know what? You really don't. But you're going to miss some flavor, and I want all the flavor out of the food. If I'm not going to fry it in oil, if I'm not going to add a lot of additives to my food, I want the food to be as flavorful as possible. So I'm going to add now to that chopped mushroom. And the mushroom here, or that I bought, is just sliced cremini mushrooms from Trader Joe's. When you get them this way, this is 10 ounces, just a few dollars, you get some pretty hefty sized pieces of mushroom, which is okay, but again, we want a more subtle and more homogeneous look to a risotto. So I'm going to add the mushrooms. Oops, that's one way to do it. This is, the recipe calls for 2½ cups, and what I was going to say is that I put them out on a board first, and I didn't finely chop them. There's still some nice sized pieces in there, but I made them less I made them more consistent chunks rather than some really big pieces and some not. Okay, now I'm adding flavoring, and as the recipe calls for, I could have added herbs de Provence, I could have added thyme. I did add a little bit of salt. We don't use a lot of salt, but I add usually in something that'll serve 6 to 8 people, I may use a half a teaspoon or less. So what's happening, because I haven't put moisture in yet, but I have the mushroom in and the seasonings, is that the mushrooms have kind of blended with the onion. The moisture has pulled all the light brown from the bottom of the pot, and the herbs have sort of toasted. So the whole thing smells fabulous. And in this case, I use something that I like from Trader Joe's. It's a mushroom. It's called multi-purpose umami. So it's a mushroom. It has mushrooms, a little bit of salt, and black pepper, crushed red pepper, some thyme. You don't need any of that. You can just use thyme or an Italian seasoning if you want, or French seasoning like herbs de Provence. All right, and now we're adding 2.5 cups of buckwheat, and we're going to add my broth. And I'm going to put this back in the freezer because later this week I'm going to add water to it. I have an 8-quart stock pot. I'll cover it by about 2 inches of water. Add a bay leaf, which I'm going to do here. I grow my own bay. If you go to a nursery and ask for bay laurel, ask them for a 1 gallon rather than a 5 gallon. You don't need a big thing. Be careful because a 1 gallon bay laurel will grow to a 50-foot tree. And you don't want that unless you really do. But I just have mine. I keep it cut to about 3 foot high and 3 foot wide. It's a nice little green plant. And I have my own bay leaves. And bay leaves have a nice flavor to add to soups and stews and beans. And so I always keep some on hand, and I like it fresh. And now I'm going to add 2.5 cups of broth. And we're going to let the Instant Pot do its thing. Am I right about, yes, 2.5 cups of broth, and oh, I was wrong. It's 1.5 cups of buckwheat. Sorry. 1.5 cups of buckwheat, and then 2, and I knew that couldn't have been right if it was 2.5 cups of buckwheat, and 2.5 cups of broth. And you've got the recipe. You need the recipe for these things because I'm not giving you amounts on much of anything because the recipe will do that. Okay, so I'm going to let the Instant Pot come to pressure, set it on high, and this is what it looks like when you set it. I just locked the lid in. The pressure valve is up. I hit pressure. Oh, stop, saute. I hit pressure cook. The last thing I did was 24 minutes, and I'm not doing that because this only takes 5 minutes, and then coming down from pressure for about 15 to 20 minutes. So it's going to pressure cook for 5 minutes, and then we're done. And I'll add some parsley to it, and I'll add a little bit of balsamic vinegar, and you'll see what that looks like, and you'll see it cook. So I'm going to move this back here. Now, this is plugged in. If I had unplugged it to move it, I would have to reset it. But it's plugged in with a heavy-duty cord, one that had the 3 prongs capability, and so I was able to move it. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, if you look at your recipe sheet, at the end, and you're going to see me do this, of cooking the buckwheat risotto, we're going to sprinkle it, not sprinkle it, we're going to drizzle it with a lemon sauce. And this lemon sauce is very similar to, if you look at my website, my vegan sour cream. It starts with get you the ingredients and I'll show you. Oh, no, actually, it's similar to the vegan sour cream because it starts with the premise that lemon juice is going to give you a tart flavor. I call mine sour cream. They call this lemon sauce, or the recipe that I was so inspired by that I am using, and it was created by a Brandy Doming from the Vegan 8. I have one of her cookbooks. She uses cashews as the base, and in my recipe for the vegan sour cream, I use silken tofu. You're going to see me use silken tofu today. This is a much richer version in the sense of it being a water and cashew base, but it also adds protein as well, and it's also delicious. And in her recipe, she recommends that you can use it for veggies and pasta and burritos and tacos as you would sour cream. Well, when you have something like that that has that the lemony flavor, a very creamy kind of consistency, and you have it with something that is kind of thick and sort of moundy, and you're going to see that's the way that the risotto is. It's nice to have a little drizzle of some kind of a sauce. So keep this recipe. You can use it for a number of things, even baked potatoes with broccoli, and drizzle this over, and you've got a wonderful vegan meal. Okay, in order to make this, we are using cashews, and in her recipe, or actually I don't even think I gave you when I typed the recipe, I didn't even give you the option of soaking it or not soaking it. I just recommended you soak them. This is a cup of cashews, and when I buy my cashews, let me show you. I buy them. If I buy them for something like this, and I keep them in the freezer because I keep them for quite a long time, and I use cashews like this in a number of recipes where I want a creaminess, and I use it for an Alfredo sauce. I use it for a cheese soup sauce, much less, but I still do. But these are raw cashew pieces. You can buy them when you go to buy nuts. You'll see whole cashews and cashew pieces. These are a fraction of the cost. One might be $8 a pound, the other is like $4 something a pound. And so these are raw cashew pieces. And most blenders will not turn cashews into a cream. The Vitamix will. And so in her original recipe, she said, if you don't have a Vitamix, then you have to soak it. Well, I soak them anyway because I really like the consistency of a silky creaminess, and I don't have to process it as long if I soak them. So I simply put them in this is a cup of cashews, filled this with water, let it sit for the day, and I'm putting them in now, and they're quite soft. And I'm going to put 3/4 of a cup of water. I'm going to put 1/4 of a cup of lemon juice. This is fresh lemon juice that I squeeze from the lemons on my tree, and then I just freeze it and put them in a container to use all week long. The amount that I'm going to use for the week, and the rest stays in the freezer. So I freeze them in kind of 1 cup blocks. Okay, and then I'm adding onion and a little bit of salt. Okay, how do I store it? I'll show you. I'm going to put this down here. So you're going to see how the Vitamix will turn this mixture into a cream. Let me turn this off. Now, if I put, I'm sorry about the sound. I mean, I have to put it louder. If I put it at 10, it's going to blend it, but it throws it way up here at the top, and it's harder for me to keep it blended well when I'm scraping it from all over. So I don't usually go to 10 yet. See what I mean? It's starting to throw it all over. Okay, I'm going to push it down. By waiting a little while, I was able to let it get thick, so it wasn't quite as anxious to jump up to the top as it would be if it was much more liquid. In the beginning, it's much more liquid. So sort of start slow, let it get thicker. And because I had, because I soaked this, it's already very, very smooth, but I want to get it a little bit smoother. I'm hearing the Instant Pot start to come to pressure now. And what's going to happen is it's going to come to pressure, and it's very soon. It'll count down 10 minutes, and then it'll start counting backwards. And we'll just leave it there. Well, actually, we'll leave it there. It doesn't even matter if my goal was to let it release pressure for 10 or 15 to 20 minutes. We'll just open it up when we're ready at the end of class. All right. If I wanted this sauce to be a warm sauce, and that's part of, that smells great. It's lemony, but it's a very creamy consistency, and I want to make sure that it's as smooth as I want it to be. Oh yeah. Ooh, 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 ooh. That is perfect. Yum. Okay. So how do I store it? I love bell jars. And this is a, gosh, what would that be? An ounce. It's not quite two, it may be 2 cups. Or at least a cup and a half. Okay. Let me pour this towards you so you can see it. Doesn't that look wonderful? If I wanted to make a soup out of this, if I wanted it to be a warm sauce with a Vitamix, you can turn vegetables or any kind of a mixture into a soup by leaving it on for a few minutes. And the Vitamix motor, that's the whole point of it. That's why they're pricey. The Vitamix motor is strong enough to do that, and it will start actually heating it so that you can serve it from that. It comes with a cookbook. You can buy a more complete cookbook that gives you a lot of recipes for making soups. Okay, that's as much as I hate to waste what's in here. I think I'll stop now because I could be cleaning it for quite a long time. Okay, so there we are. This is going to be the sauce that we're going to drizzle over the risotto. Nice. Okay, then the next thing we're going to make also takes some blending. I'm just going to unplug this and move it. Is the, you know what I should have told you, or maybe I did, that our menu is beginning with risotto, and then we're going to the lemon sauce for the risotto, and then we're going to go to to serve with the risotto a green, because we want to have lots of leafy greens every day. You want to have 2 to 4 cups of leafy greens. Raw, it's going to be less if it's cooked. And today we're doing Swiss chard because I wanted to show you Swiss chard, but that's going to be the last thing that I'm going to cook because it's coming out of the pan and it's going to be served. So I'm going to jump ahead and show you the chocolate pudding. I did a meal recently for family and some friends, and it was one of the best plant-based taco fillings I had ever tasted. I'm excited about this. Next Thursday, Chef AJ, and some of you follow her, she's a vegan chef. She's been vegan for 43 years. It was junk food vegan. What's vegan? Oreos are vegan, French fries are vegan, Coke with and Slurpee with Coke syrup is vegan. Well, she was a junk food vegan, as she says, for a good part of that, 50, 75 pounds overweight. And when she learned to eat whole food, plant-based, not just plant-based, she dropped the weight. And she was, as a career, a trained chef, actually pastry chef. And she made all of her desserts for a top restaurant with just date paste instead of sugar. So you're going to see me use date paste today. And so the recipe that I'm making, I was going to say I'm going to be interviewed by her next Thursday as an author, as well as doing a cooking demonstration. And I decided I was going to do the taco filling, and I'm going to do a Mexican meal, a wonderful Instant Pot Spanish rice, the taco filling, and I'm going to use this recipe again because I did this with friends. They loved it because it was a great way to end a meal or end a spicy meal with something cool and chocolate. Okay, so we're doing a chocolate pudding without sugar. So this can you see it? I think you can. This just counted down. Now it's going to start counting backwards. It's already pressure cooked the oat groats for 5 minutes. And now it's going to count backwards. And as I said, I'm just going to ignore it. There's a little silver button on top that has risen. That is the pressure button. When it's no longer under pressure, the button will fall. But there's also a little switch that I can push to release pressure when I'm ready. All right, so you can make chocolate desserts that are not high fat. Why? Because cocoa is chocolate. It's the inside of the cocoa bean. And if you, yes, it is on here. 1 tablespoon of cocoa, because cocoa is almost defatted, just plain cocoa, ground cocoa. It's the butterfat, or not the butterfat, but the, butterfat or coconut oil or whatever they add to it that adds to the smoothness of the chocolate, but also the high calories. But this cocoa powder, a tablespoon is only 20 calories. We're using, 3 tablespoons? Or is it 4? Let's see. Oh, here it is. We're using, a third of a cup. So that's a third of a cup, by the way, is 5 1/3. 5 tablespoons, 1/3 teaspoon, so it's almost 6 tablespoons. But again, that's hardly anything. And so we're using cocoa, but we're also using one of my favorite ingredients. I use a lot of tofu. Tofu is a healthy food. Don't let it scare you. There was a time that it was feared, or during which it was feared that tofu, because there are or phytoestrogens in it, were bad for us, and the new research shows that it's actually protective. I have said this before, that Christine Funk, who is, as they call it, breast surgeon of the stars, she's done a number of celebrities' cancer surgeries. She's very well known and very trusted. Recommends first of all, she became vegan as soon as she realized she wasn't healing people. She would do surgeries, they would get sick again. And she started doing research and realized that the animal proteins were very stimulating to growth, as were the hormones in the animals. She and her entire family went vegan, I think it was 18 years ago. She recommends the same things for her patients. And she says we should have 2 to 3 servings of soy a day because of its protective quality against breast cancer. So I have here, let me show you the box. It's not in the refrigerator section at the store. It's actually in the cupboard where they have Asian foods. And it's, I like nori or mori new. It's silken tofu. I always go to organic when I buy tofu or any soy product because that's really, it is one of the crops that is heavily well, treated with glyphosate because they use the GMO soy, and I don't want that. But in any case, tofu, it's silken tofu, $2.30 or 40 cents. I buy a number of them, just keep them in the cupboard because they don't have to be refrigerated, and it can give you a very silky, well, as I said, my vegan sour cream is very similar to that, maybe not quite as creamy, but it's what I've always used. I wanted you to get a new recipe, a little bit different, but otherwise I would have been doing my vegan sour cream for this particular combination of foods. Now, date paste. I've given you on this recipe because this recipe was from a chef. His name is Del Souf, and it's out of one of his cookbooks, Better Vegan. And he has a date paste that he makes with dates that are right out of the package. And I buy my dates organic. They have them at Trader Joe's. They have them at Costco. They have them at other stores. You can buy them organic or not. But if you use medjool dates, they're the softest. They are the sweetest. They're the biggest. These are pretty soft. And one of the things he says, check twice, that you get the stem end. There's quite often a little, let me see if I can show you here. See this little teeny stem right in there that I could pull right off? See that? I don't want that in there. Even if it wouldn't wreck the blender, which it wouldn't, I don't want that in there. And then when I open it up, I'm going to find a seed. And as he says, check twice. Count the number of dates that you expect to use or that you have used, and then count the number of seeds, because that seed will ruin your processor. I'm going to put these dates back because I don't need them, but this is what we're talking about when we talk about dates. It's one way that you can have sweets and still have whole food desserts, because dates are a whole food. They are loaded with fiber. 2 to 3 dates. Each date has at least 1 gram of fiber. They have a tiny bit of protein, but they have a lot of nourishment. And again, when you grind them up, there's nothing processed here. Well, very slightly processed, because what you're doing is you're simply grinding up a fruit with water. Well, if the dates are not very soft, the way he recommended you do it, which is just to take 2 cups of dates with 1.5 cups to 2 cups of water, depending on how much you have to add in your food processor. Oh, the food processor is over there, to blend them, is one way you can do it. But if the dates are not very soft, it's not going to give you, I think, as smooth of a mixture. So I do it, and it's on my website, and it's called Nan's Favorite Date Paste. I do it the way Tammy of Nutmeg Notebook likes to do her date paste, and that is that I pour boiling water over the dates, and I'll do an entire pound of dates. Boiling water over the dates, let it soak in, drain it out, and then before I blend it to 1 pound, I'll add 1 more cup of water, but I'll use that water that I have drained in any amount more that I have to. And because they've been soaked, because they're puffed up, rehydrated, they blend perfectly and evenly. And this is the date paste that I made that way. So you can do it either way. The recipe for My favorite date paste is in my website, nansimonson.com, under desserts or miscellaneous. And his is right here, and you can experiment, see which way you like. Now, what do you do with extra date paste? You can freeze it in small containers because it'll last a couple of weeks in your refrigerator. I've had it last less, and I wasn't sure why. And so I'll keep about a cup out, cup and a half out. The rest I'll freeze, and I use it for everything. If something calls for a sweetener, like maple syrup or honey or sugar, I don't use any sweeteners that way. I always just use date paste. I feel better about that. Now, I've got 1 cup, oops. Okay, I have 1 cup of date paste, 1 carton of the silken tofu. I'm adding 1/3 of a cup of cocoa and a little bit of salt. And you could leave the salt off. If you have a cardiovascular situation going, high blood pressure, clogged arteries, and your doctor says, oh, but you're going to, high cholesterol, you're going to need a statin, calls for a half a teaspoon of vanilla, and I kind of treat it. And you know what I'm going to do also? You don't have to do this. It's not even in the recipe, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. A little less. Why? Because that's very Latin. To get a cinnamon chocolate, I'm going to add a little less than a half a teaspoon. To get a cinnamon chocolate is you'll find it in Mexican hot chocolates, and it's I don't know, I just think it adds to the fun of the dish. So this is sweet. It's a chocolate dessert that's loaded with protein because soy products are high in protein. Soy is a legume. So you have fiber, you have protein, you have phytonutrients. All of these are good foods. Put this here, get this out of the way. Getting a nice little pile here. Okay, and now I'm going to blend. Isn't this a cute little blender? Now this will have to be turned down a couple of times to get it to blend well. It's not a problem at all. I could have used my big food processor, but I happen to have this little one. I could have used the Vitamix, but I would have had to clean it out. And for convenience, I decided, let me just use a different piece of equipment so that I'm not washing dishes while you're waiting for us to move on with our meal. Okay. Now there's no question but that the lemon sauce will be better if left in the refrigerator several hours. It will thicken a little bit, as will this, and the flavors will marry better. But we don't have that luxury because I'm making it and serving it, because I want you to see what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to do this maybe 2 more times. Marissa, do we have any questions? Okay, now it's getting nicely blended. But I want to make sure I get everything from the bottom. So this is a chocolate pudding. And it's a healthy chocolate pudding. So when people say, oh, I can't go plant-based because I can't give up my sweets. Well, no, don't eat donuts. They're full of saturated fat, and a lot of them have hydrogenated fat in them, which is hideous for your arteries. And you can make your own vegan brownies. Or actually, one of my favorite brownies that I've made for class is made with sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes, date paste, they are wonderful. And there is a place on our website that we're starting now to save my recipes at the Lifestyle Medical website, and some of the videos I believe are being saved as well. Okay, we're done. Oh, this is nice and smooth. Take a look. Look. See? Isn't that nice? So there's your chocolate pudding. Again, would be better with leaving it to sit. And I'm going to put it over here. Can't do that right now, but that's okay. All right. Now finally, let's make our greens. So this is called spicy stir fry. You know I don't fry anything, but it's a saute, dry saute. So I've left my broth out. I'm going to bring this up to high. This is called a induction cooker. If you have something like this, maybe you use it camping in your camper, or you might want to use it if you have a party that you're going to have and you need something outside where there's electricity, or maybe your burners are all full. These can be really handy. The way they work is with, but only with, pans that, ooh, boy, that heats up fast. Let me show you something. If you have a pan that will attract a magnet, oh shoot, that wasn't smart. It was already hot, which it did. This was a magnet which I just sort of melted. Then you can use it on an induction cooker. That's how you can test. And this is getting very hot very quickly. Okay, so what are we doing with, you can see it's starting to smoke even. I'm going to put it just a touch lower. So what's making this spicy, and this has a very slight Asian flavor, is a combination of these ingredients I'll discuss in just a minute, but I'm seeing this thing start to really heat up. All right, hold on just a minute. Here it is. I'm going to put this back here for just a second, because we're going to dry saute an onion, and in this case I'm just thin slicing it into crescents. And this is a half an onion, and it will cook down to next to nothing. All right. Throw it in the pan, and you know the drill. What's going to happen is it's going to sizzle. It's going to start to caramelize. While it's doing that, I want to show you chard. In my backyard, I have a chard plant that's this, where's my, oh, you can't see me. Okay. that's this high. I had picked the initial leaves. It started to bolt. It became quite high. It's sending off leaves all over. I'm not using that because the leaves are, I'll say, inconsistent in size. And instead, I went to the Corona Family Farm store. They have some beautiful chard. And I chopped most of it. This is about 12 ounces of chard. The recipe calls for 10. I have an option. I don't have a problem with the stems of chard, but they need to be cooked a little bit longer. And so, as with beet greens, I would normally cut off the stems, throw them in first for a little while. Keep turning this. And then throw in the rest of them. Well, that's not the way I directed us to do in this recipe, so I'm not going to do it that way. So if you saw what I just did, I sort of lined the stems up, cut off most of them. There's some in here because I really like the color. And then I'm simply cutting across the leaf and then across again. This recipe can be used for a number of different greens. You can use it for collard greens. The problem is collard greens take much longer to cook. Beet greens, the thing is, I love beet greens by themselves. I'll saute onion, I'll add some garlic to it. And this flavor would be great, but the beet greens are so delicate and delicious that I kind of don't want to do anything else to them. And I'm going to show you what this is doing in just a second. I'm going to add a little bit of my garlic. The recipe doesn't call for garlic, but I just happen to love garlic in anything. And I'm getting the same end result that I got in the Instant Pot. The onions are browning. Let me show you. Can you see that? They're starting to brown. I'm deglazing. I'm going to add now, this is hotter than the Instant Pot was. I'm going to add some garlic. Obviously, I'm going to need to make some more. Okay. There's still some broth in here, not a lot. There's still some broth. And see, the second I take this off of the pan, you heard that beep, the heat turns itself off. That's the thing about the convection cooker. Yeah. And I'm going to add the greens. The value of the wok is these high sides. I've made this same dish with a saute pan, a high-sided, about that high, really wide saute pan, and it works just fine. But I like what the wok allows me to do. It allows me to get a huge volume of greens, and you know what's going to happen. When we're done, see, I'm doing this, but it's still pretty cool. Otherwise, I would burn myself. I'm stirring the onions into this. When I'm finished with this, we're going to have a tiny bit. That's why the recipe for all of these greens says it will feed 2 to 3 people. My husband and I will usually finish one head like this. Now I can tell that it's getting a little brown in the bottom, so I'm adding a little bit more broth. The smell is wonderful. And I'm going to cover this and let it steam, just barely. But first, I'm going to add the sauce, which was tamari, which is soy sauce. It's Japanese soy sauce that's gluten-free. If you don't have a problem with gluten, you can use the Chinese soy sauce or any soy sauce you want. But I also get the Tamari Light, which is 50% less sodium, because soy sauce, again, is pretty high in sodium, and I can't see having more than we really need. Not that we need any at all, but cut down as much as I can and still get that flavor. This is organic rice vinegar. Rice vinegar has a nice bit of acid without being too sharp, and then a little bit of sriracha. Isn't that an interesting combination? And a little bit of sweetener. And what sweetener do you think I use? Date paste. Called for a little bit of sugar, but I use date paste in your recipe. It just says date paste. Now I'm gonna let this. Let me just show it to you before I do this, because I'm gonna put our meal together to show you. And it's going to probably cook a little longer than I would let it if I were serving it to us tonight immediately. So I'm going to put it a little bit lower. Things like chard.
So then,
yeah.
there's a question of what do you use instead of to replace oil to saute the Swiss chard?
This entire time, I've been sauteing everything with nothing but broth. There was no oil in this at all. I started with the onion. I browned that. I kept adding my broth. It's not very soupy. Let me show you. See, look. But the chard also had been washed, and so there was some moisture in that. And I'm going to cover it now and let it steam. Thanks for that question. But this is the hardest concept for people. And that is that I can make, and I do a lot of, well, I cook constantly. I love to cook. I'm Italian, and we use oil like crazy, but I don't, because I don't want to add the oils. I want whole, unprocessed foods, and oils are processed. Even the olive oil that is extra virgin cold pressed is more processed of a food. Plus, for a tablespoon of oil, it's 120 calories. I don't count calories. I don't need to. My husband doesn't count calories. Actually, most people I know that are whole food, plant-based, that don't do processed foods and just eat whole foods, plant-based, can eat to complete satiety if we watch the fat. And I'll eat avocado, I'll eat olives, I'll have nuts and seeds, but I don't add oils. And that's one way that I can keep steadily at a weight I like, eat huge amounts of food that are very satisfying just by not adding oil when I don't need to. So how is this looking? Oh, this looks perfect. I'm going to cut it way down because I want to show you the meal and I want this to be really pretty when I serve it. All right, so let's serve a meal. I wish you were here. I wish you could join me. That would be very fun. But let's start with our oat groats. Oh, and I have a little bit of a bonus. When my husband came home from the office, I realized that our meal wasn't, well, it wasn't quite what I liked from a meal. I like the colors of a rainbow. And today we're getting oat groats. I'm releasing the pressure. It says 25 minutes, so it's already been cooked for 25 minutes. The pressure was still there. Okay, the pressure gauge fell down. I'll take it off. I'm going to, nope, can't pick that up. Let me show you, oops, what I have here. Okay. I'm going to pull out, it was right on the top. I pulled out my bay leaf before I even stir this. Look. Let me get enough light for you. Oh, let's see. There. Isn't that beautiful? All right. I'm using a fork rather than a spoon because I don't want to mash the grain. Oh, it smells so good. Look at this. I stirred it up. You see how loose it is? If I put more, the original recipe, I told you where I was inspired by this recipe, but I changed the recipe a lot because the original recipe was way, way, way too wet. And let's see. And I wanted it to be more grainy. So we're going to serve a nice big pile of the risotto. My husband came home from the office and I had his meal ready to go, and he's back there watching some nature show, and I made him a salad, and that's what I was starting to say earlier. We have green here. Let me show you what this is going to look like. But we didn't have the colors of the rainbow. So I made his salad, and I do this salad all the time. I always have cherry tomatoes. I buy them organic from the market. Trader Joe's has them at a really good price. Cut those in half. Sliced some Kalamata olives. Sliced a little, I wonder if I have one out, little Persian cucumber. And some basil. I'm growing basil in my backyard. This is a piece of basil. And so there's cucumber, tomato, Kalamata olives, a little bit of salt, and a sprinkling of I love the Napa Naturals Grand Reserve balsamic vinegar because it's 4% acid and it's a rather thick vinegar. It's not really as watery as the 6%. And so we have the green of the cucumber, the red of the tomatoes, the lycopene that tomatoes offer. We have our decidedly brown main dish. We have our beautiful, look, can you see? We have our beautiful beet greens. And yes, we would eat this much. We would eat the entire pan. Oh, let's see. And I love that they're not beet greens. Sorry, they're just chard. And then we're going to follow with dessert, which is our beautiful cinnamon and chocolate pudding. A little strawberry garnish and fresh mint from my garden. And we're going to enhance the flavor of the risotto with just a little drizzle of this lemony sauce. I'll put this here. And the recipe calls for stirring this in, and I will, but I'm going to sprinkle it with parsley. And the rest I'll throw in. And again, stir it with a big fork rather than a spoon to keep it light. And that's our meal, people. This is, oh my gosh, that is so good. And or vegetable, I'm sorry, I'm probably making you hungry.
Nan, what is the brand of your stir fry pan?
This or the cooker. The cooker is Tramontina. I'd never heard of it before, but I bought it online. Tramontina, and I love it.
I think they want to know the pan.
Oh, I went into a Chinese, an Asian store. Like there's in Corona, there's the 99 store. It's not 99-cent store. It's a 99 market. Chard, they call it farm market. It's an Asian market, and the Asian markets always have an area where they sell woks, and it's an iron wok, and it's huge. I love the cover because it fits inside easily, and I can steam things well with it. And so there's no brand name. There's nothing even written on it. I just got it from an Asian market. It's well welded so that it's, or well riveted so that, you know, I'm not dealing with something that's going to fall apart on me. And I use it constantly. So this is what's left. As I said, there's not much left, but this is what I wanted to tell you, and I was going to see if anybody was going to ask me this. And that is, okay, Nan, look at this meal. You've got this grain with mushrooms. You have a green that, yes, it's a green and probably healthy because of that, but what exactly is that going to do for a person who's physically active and worries about protein? That's the question I get from everybody. Where do you get your protein? I'd like to reverse that, look at them right in the eye, and sometimes I do, and I say, well, where do you get your fiber? Fiber is because it feeds the microbiome, and the microbiome has been found, and the science has exploded on this in the last 10 years. You may want to read Will Bolshevitz's book, Fiber Fueled. The microbiome and the diversity of the plants and colors of what we eat, and the only thing the microbes and the microbiome eat, the fungus, the bacteria, the protozoas, all of these microorganisms that are in our gut, is plant food. They eat nothing but plant food, and the more they eat, the more diversity, the more they take care of our body, our vascular system, our brain. Protein's important. We need protein, but we don't need more than 10 to 15% of our calories from protein. Well, this may surprise you. This simple meal that doesn't look like it has any protein at all. Let me start with my the mushroom risotto. The mushroom risotto, the entire recipe of just this has 40 grams of protein. Where does it come from? And this is why we say if you eat enough calories, you're going to get enough protein. If you eat enough calories to maintain your weight, you're going to get enough protein. For example, the chopped onion, 4 grams of protein. The oat groats, 40 grams of protein for that 1.5 cups. The mushrooms, 8 grams of protein. The vegetable broth, 5 grams of protein in my vegetable broth. So the entire recipe is 60 grams of protein. My husband and I will probably eat this entire pot in about 4 meals. And that means that each meal of it, each amount serving of it, is going to be about 10 grams of protein. No, actually, if we eat in 4, it's going to be more like 15 grams of protein. The cashew sauce, I've written it down somewhere, is something like for a tablespoon, just 1 tablespoon, and I probably used 1.5 tablespoons. That is another 2 to 4 grams of protein. The dessert is 8 grams of protein for 1/2 cup of this pudding, 8 grams. The Swiss chard is another 3 grams for a serving of Swiss chard. You see, we get plenty of protein. This meal, I need about 45 grams a day. This meal in itself, if I ate all of this, including the pudding, would give me something like 25 in this meal alone. But I had beans in my salad today for lunch, some of my vegan sour cream, which is made out of the tofu, the silken tofu. It could have been made out of this. And again, more protein. So we get plenty of protein on plant-based diets, people, plenty. Anybody have any other questions? I've kept you long enough. I hope you've learned things. I hope you're inspired to consider even doing 1 day a week completely plant-based. Try that. Then maybe 2 days a week completely plant-based. I remember when we first considered transitioning if I have even one meal, because think of what we do. Breakfast, there's eggs and milk and cheeses. Lunch, there's always a meat and or cheese or dairy or eggs. Dinner, the same thing. I remember the first day, the first meal that we had no animal protein at all. I thought, oh man, what's nourishing us? And then the more I learned, the more I gained in knowledge, the more research I did. That's what my book is full of, is this research and the end recommendations. The more I realized this is the way to eat. I'm 70 years old and I haven't been this healthy in 20 years. I was so sick at one point, a little more than 3 years ago, that a rheumatologist was going to put me on immunosuppressants because of rheumatoid arthritis. I hurt everywhere. Autoimmune disease is raging, and I was pre-diabetic, and I had high cholesterol. That's statins, that's every specialist wanted me to put me on a drug. And it was at about that time that I began studying for my certification as a health coach and realized there's another way. And there is, truly there is. Anyway, recipes for longevity. Any questions?
Christine wants to thank you, Nan, and she wants to know if you're giving any cooking classes locally.
We're not doing anything other than virtual right now. If we did, it would be through Lifestyle Medicine. I do cooking classes that are part of my YouTube channel, but nothing face-to-face individual yet. And I think it's way too soon. People are very sensitive about anyone breathing over their food. Any other questions? Thank you, Christine, for the question. As you can
just
see,
a lot of thank yous.
Well, thank you. I've got my sunflowers there. That's my signature flower. In my book, I explain why. It's one of those flowers that shouldn't grow. It comes up in the roughest of soil. It can come up and stay up with no water. It'll follow the sun. It's a tenacious plant. And I think that's a great way to live our life when we decide, you know what, I don't care what age I am, I'm not going down like the rest of the people with chronic diseases that are developed by poor health choices. And so we can make that decision every time we open our mouth and put something in it that we're going to fight the trend. So I'm glad you're here. It shows that you're paying attention. And Marissa, thank you for your time. Marissa put in a full day at work and she's still working. So thank you for that, Marissa. And
Thank you, Nan.
I'll say good night to you all. Thank you for being with me, and bon appetit. I wish you were here to have some of this, but make the recipes and share them with other people and let them know about our mission to stay healthy for decades. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.